Well, it's exciting today because the weather's changed and this is me back in the stable for painting, so this is good. So I'm Lel from Made by Marley, and come on into the stable and let's get painting. So this beautiful piece of furniture came my way yesterday. Now this is the heaviest piece of furniture Martin and I have ever moved. It is so heavy. Now it's got quite a few things wrong with it for the furniture painting haters out there in the world. I'm afraid that the veneer's all shot at the bottom. It's got a big piece of veneer missing here. It was actually going to the dump. So I'm going to save it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a really beautiful sort of very Bohemian makeover. So let's get started. Okay, so this is a very bold choice and I don't want anybody to freak out because it's a really bright green. It's the Antibes green from Sloan. It's only going to be our base coat because what I'm intending to do is dry brush Provence over the top of this to tone this down, but this is going to highlight all the fancy detail in the piece. Now, because I'm doing a Bohemian finish doesn't mean to say that you can't use more muted colours. You just change out the colours that I'm using for more muted tones and you'll get the same effect. So don't be frightened if you think, oh, this is going to be too bright for me. You know, I'm just making a huge statement out of this piece, but you can tone down your colours. So I'm going to be applying the chalk paint because this piece is all about the texture. Now, as you can see here, this is a piece here where the veneer's moving. It's actually burnt down. It's smooth. It's just, it's gone down in. I'm not going to worry too much about this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do chalk paint strokes like this, and there is going to be a little bit of character on the top of this, unfortunately, because of this piece. I don't want to sand it. I don't want to do anything more to it. It's just the way it is. So, and I'm just going to go across the whole piece of furniture, doing a crosshatch motion like this, to make sure the piece gets lots of texture, and I'm going to paint the whole piece this colour of green. Okay, so the whole piece has been undercoated. That was a bit of a marathon. It's a huge piece. As you can see, it's had one crosshatch coat because we're going to be dry brushing this. So what I'm going to do is, because we're in the stable, I would normally leave it, you know, overnight, you know, for 24 hours, but I'll be leaving this for a couple of days just to make sure it is properly dry before we do any more to it. Okay, so the piece is completely dry and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do on this panel here, and then I'm going to show you the part that I've already painted just so you know what you're doing. Now these are the colours I'm using. That's Florals, or maybe it's Provence. I'll find out. This one here, Giverny, which is a sort of bluey kind of that colour, and I'm using a little bit of Napoleonic blue. So these are the three colours, and we have Antibes green as our base coat. Right, now you're going to need various different brushes for this. Some of them cheap chip brushes like this, because you're going to be doing dry brushing, and just your round brushes and maybe a cutting brush that you can dampen. You're going to need a water spray. So let's get going. The first thing I want to do is I want to not lose this green underneath. So I'm going to dry brush around here, 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 here and here, so that all these parts stay where they are. And what I'm going to do is I'm really using this colour here, which we can't at the moment know whether it's Florence or Provence, but whatever one it is.
Somebody painted over the label.
Yeah, there's no paint. It's really bad that I can't remember, but it's either one of those, and I will clarify. So to dry brush, you need a tiny, tiny, tiny amount on your paint, like this. Now I've been doing it on the other side, so, and what I've been doing is I've just been kind of offloading onto a rag, just to make sure there's not too much. So let's do this panel first. So what you're doing with dry brushing is you're trying to keep the original green underneath, so that it peeks through. Now I only gave this one coat of undercoat, and you'll see why when I show you what I'm going to do. It's just that I'm going to wipe some of this back to get the original brown wood as well, and it's easier to do when it's like that, and it'll naturally kind of distress itself, so don't worry too much about that. A little bit more. So just tiny amounts. I mean, there's if you can see that, there's hardly anything on here. If I feel there's too much, I'm just offloading a little bit. So what you want to get to is, and I'm trying to do this quite quickly, is, so you can see this is naturally distressing, and I'm leaving that, and I might add some water to do it, let it do a little bit more. Now I've got another brush here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dip it in the Giverny, and I'm going to kind of highlight here and there on this, but I'm still kind of dry brushing. Now, didn't really want it all round the edges, but so I'm going to go back to the green again. I'll offload on my cloth. And now it's always a little bit more tricky to dry brush onto flat parts. You can do it two ways. You can add a tiny little bit of water just to help it move to get it, but I'm looking for a very washed out, although this is dry brush, the rest I'm going to paint and wash it out a little bit. So I'm kind of doing both. I'm kind of dry brushing it, and I'm going to be wiping it all at this kind of same time. So I'm just trying to get the paint down first, and then we can start playing around with it. You want as much as the original green. Like, I want to keep all this in there. I don't want to get rid of that. So it takes very little paint. So now I have to kind of continue because I want to show you the full door. So I don't know whether it would be better maybe me fast forwarding this bit until I get to the sort of next bit, or I'll tell you what, I'll dry brush this and then we'll do the detail. Okay, so I just wanted to get this paint down. We can play around with this as much as we like, but I wanted it just so I could show you what I was going to do next. So I've got this pretty much where I like it, but I want to do a little bit of distressing, but I need to fill this panel in. And what I'm going to be putting in IOD Inlays on here and then hand painting a design. So I do need paint down before I do my second coat, before I can apply my inlays. So I'm just going to do something simple, like adding a little bit of paint like this, and my misting bottle, and I'm just gonna like kind of distress it in right up to the edges, just, you know, just like that, like that. I want to keep all that green around there, so you don't want to go any further. Now that's what I'm doing with the doors. Now next thing what I'm going to do is, before I kind of wipe some of the bits of the wood back, I'm going to take the Napoleonic blue, and this brush is the Napoleonic blue. Now this is where it has the propensity to go a little bit crazy, because the inlays I'm putting on are blues, and so I want to have a really blue sort of washed look on top of this. Now my paint's already quite wet, so you have to kind of take it easy, and maybe not go too crazy on it, and think about where you really want this to go. So I'm going to do something like, just put a little bit under there. It always looks good when you add water if you put it up on a rim. So now you need a cloth. This started quite dry, but, and then you're going to spritz it, and you're going to just help move it around a little with your brush. I rather like it was kind of like a thicker patch like that, and then really spritz it and dip it and dab it, spritz it and dab it, and then kind of help it with the cloth. So you're bringing back the green and you're having a bit of blue. That's a kind of odd shape. I'll get back to that in a minute. There. You're just going to give it tiny little accents of this blue. You're not going crazy, because I'm trying to get some of this is the bits that I'm trying to reveal, and this is what I said, by only having one coat of undercoat, it'll start to distress itself the more you add, and you don't want to end up I'm going to make sure there's quite a lot of the wood revealed at the bottom, but not too crazy on the rest of it. So maybe I'm trying to look at the other side, because I've actually painted it just kind of, you're not wanting it the same as the other side, but you do want, you know, it kind of balanced. So again, you're just kind of helping it along, and maybe I might just kind of so you're just picking parts out for the dark blue, because this is what's going to pull together with the inlay, which is the indigo floral inlay. So if you know that one, then you'll know the kind of colour that I'm going for here. So I'm just gonna, I haven't distressed this side here yet, but I can still do that around the edge of that door. I like this part. I'm trying to sort of, now you can't go in like that because you'll lose your green. You have to go across. So if you're wanting to put some blue over there, you have to go across the way. You can't stip it in, or you'll lose your original green, and I don't want to do that. So just maybe that, I think. That made it a little bit symmetrical. Right, a little bit, thinking a wee bit under here, and maybe some down in this here. And I'm not gonna go crazy with this, because I want that to kind of look like that. And this here, I'll give a good spritz to, and just let that run down. Now we want to have a little bit of distressing around this. Now the natural distressing would be down the bottom, anywhere that was kicked or bumped. So that's really kind of up to you where you do. I mean, these are kind of raised out, so maybe they got rubbed. I'm going to do more distressing at the bottom than probably I am at the top. We've got this natural here, so I'm just leaving that. So I'm thinking maybe this outside this edge here, we'll pretend it got a big chip. So we're just kind of rubbing back, up and down. Yeah, and maybe a piece here on this edge, because it's lost its trim here, which I didn't even try and put another piece of trim on it. I just thought this is adding to it. See, this is really nice because we've got the natural wood and it's washed the blue off the top, and we've got the green coming down, which is really nice, although I don't really particularly want that drip. And I don't particularly want that drip in there either, but there's going to be an inlay on there, so I'm not going to panic. Do you ever wish you hadn't touched something? Right, so down this bit down the bottom, and we'll finish off, and I'll show you this side, and then I'm going to go and do the whole of the front and the whole of the top in this same way. The top surface, the flat surface on the top, and the two sides, I'm going to do something a bit different. It's going to be more how we did the doors, you know, like dry brushing around the edges, adding some colour and washing it, but I'll show you how I do that on the tops. But this is the technique, and this is just something you really need to play about with. If you don't want the distressing, give it 2 coats of undercoat and leave it a good 3 days solidly dry before you start adding all your water. But obviously this was my plan to do this, and I'm really quite happy with it. But we'll do this. I want quite a bit of this distressed away at the bottom. Oop. So I'm going to kind of soften my paint up first with my brush, which I'll start to make the paint, it won't come off then in sort of circles, it'll come off when I do this, it'll start to move away. Oops, I'm saturating over here. I'm going to go right down to the bottom there. Yeah, I think that's probably, I might do a wee bit on this corner. Corners obviously are the places that get bumped the most. So, you know, you can always go ham on the corners. There. That's it. That's my door as it stands. And I think I'm pretty happy with it. I know it probably wouldn't naturally distress in there, but I'm just going to kind of give it a bit of the brown, highlight it out. Right, and I'll get Martin to show you the other side, and then I'll get on and do the rest. So this is how it looks. This side here's still a bit damp, but it's starting to dry, and I've only done as far as here, and the door you've just seen. Okay, so we did the blending, and what I did off camera is I applied the indigo florals inlays. Now, if you want to have a really in-depth how to apply inlays, click the link above, and it'll take you straight to a video where I do it really in depth. But basically, you paint the surface, you apply the inlay, you wet it on with a cloth, you let it completely dry, and this is me just getting ready to take this one off. So I'm just wetting it, and then you just peel your inlays off like that. Now, although we did a blend, I had to just apply one solid colour to get, you know, my inlays done. Now, what my intention to do with this piece is to use stamps and put a pattern as if it's part of this pattern using the stamp. So I'm just going to go away off camera and just work out how I'm actually going to make this happen, or whether I'm going to put the stamps here, but I'm just going to have a quick look at it. So I'm going to be using the sunflower stamps, but I'm not going to be making them sunflowers. I think I'm going to be probably making them sort of gerberas instead to match my theme. Now, the way I've applied the inlays, I wanted gaps, obviously, to put my stamps. I'm going to kind of, when I do the drawers up here, I'm just going to put it over the top and paint over the top, deciding on where I want to put my stamps. But down here, I'm going to do something pretty much like this, maybe down a bit, and have maybe a leaf up here in this corner. So I'm just going to ink it first, because we're going to have to paint all this in. So you just need enough that's, you know, you've got an outline to paint. Make sure you've covered the whole stamp. I'm not going to be using a mount, because that's how I roll. Put it on and don't shift it. Make sure you press all the edges down. Like that. All my cats are fighting outside. Like that. And that's that done. Now, it's not the strongest of colours, because I'm going to paint it in, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over with a blue ink when I finally paint the design in. So this is just a design to paint. It's just basically the shape, so we know where we're going with it. So it doesn't even matter if I kind of overlap this either, because I know what I'm doing with it. So just make sure that's all printed out. Like that. Now, lid on the ink. I deliberated. I wasn't sure whether I was going to use this colour or I was going to use this colour. I'm going to have navy centres or Napoleonic blue centres with this colour on the outside, I think. Not this colour. I couldn't quite make up my mind, but I think I'm going to go with this one. And all you need to do, and you've seen me do this before, is just paint it in, because we're going to stamp with the blue ink over the top of it so that it all comes together. So all I'm going to do is going to give this a really nice coat of this coral colour that I mixed, and I mixed that from Annie Sloan, Emperor's Silk and Barcelona Orange, and this is what the colour I got. So you can just be, quite, putting it in. You don't need to have too much finesse at this point. The stamp over the top will tidy it all up, and I'm just going to go on, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to do some stamping up here and on the other drawers, just here and there, just to give it a little bit of colour, and then we'll get to the top. I still haven't managed to fix the top, because on the piece of bumpy veneer that I thought was completely smooth, there was obviously another layer of veneer, and I had to cut it out with a Stanley knife, and I had to wood fill it, so the paint hasn't, the top hasn't actually even been painted yet. I'm just going to get the design on, and it'll be done the same as this, but just more of a wash onto it. So that's where we're at, and this is where I'm going to continue going. Okay, so I'm sorry I've jumped about on this piece. It was all to do with the top and the piece of veneer. I had to cut it out. Now I've cut it out, and I've got it as smooth as I'm probably going to get it, and I've repainted it back in. Now I'm going to use the same colours that I did for the blend, but we're not dry brushing this. I'm just going to be using water and just distressing the top and the sides. So I'm going to just do a starting bit, and this is just your sort of kind of like preference on how you choose to do it. I'm going to start with my original colour, and I'm just going to start putting some colour down. So maybe some of the green in there. Whoops, helps if I spray it the right way. And just move your paint. Now I want to add some of this. It's not so much a blend, it's just a kind of mushing it all together sort of distress, which brings all your colours together. I'm going to put some navy around here like that, but go back in with my green there, add some water, and let's see how we can work with this. And you're just playing with it back and forward. The more water you add, the more you can move your paint. So I'm not exactly wanting to blend it all together. I'm wanting to have patches of like, so the darker, just to kind of pull this all together. So I think it does need a little bit more of this here. And I'm just going to paint the whole top like this, just so it blends in and it works with everything else we've done. And then we'll get to stamping our painted flowers. So I'll go ahead and do this, the sides and the top. So blue ink, I've stamped this one with black. I just wanted to check everything was going in the right direction. So once you've painted on your shapes, we're going to stamp these with blue ink. Hopefully this blue will coordinate with this blue, and we'll stamp the leaves as well. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some gold embossing over the details and round here and down here. I've done that to the rest of the piece, it's just so you can see it. And we're going to talk handles now. The beautiful big brass handles that came off here are way too boxy and a little bit too traditional now for this piece, because it's very Bohemian. So what I think I'm going to do is I've got a mix of these ones with this perfect colour there, the blue and the gold on them. And I've also got these ones as well. So I think I'm going to mix and match these just to see how they look on the piece. So that's what I'm going to do with handles. But anyway, I'm just going to get on and do this. So all you're doing is you're stamping your stamp. Now the tricky bit for this is to get it back exactly where it was before. So you just have to work away until you can think you've got it in the right position. And just make sure that it's all patted down, because you want the best stamping you can get. And that's how that comes out. And the leaves, again, you're just kind of sorting them out so that you can put them on. And all you do is you go around wherever you've put your design, you just put your stamp in. I don't really want it to go onto that flower. You can mask it off if you don't feel confident. And this is just going to bring a whole new dimension. Once you've got all your stamping done, and if you have detail that needs gold, but I just think this needs it. Oop, a bit much on my finger there. I just went around and just really highlighted some of the edges, not all of them, and not the whole thing. I didn't go all the way around. And then I just rubbed the gold over this detail, and again, not the whole thing, just some of it, just to give it that extra sort of bohemian sort of kind of effect and finish. And that's all I did the hinges, and that just brings it all to life. Now there's not a piece of mould in here, so I'm just going to do this. Some down here, just whatever you think. And I've already kind of done down the bottom here, but I'm going to put some maybe on here just to kind of pull it together. And maybe some up on a bit on the drawers here, maybe. Some on that worn away patch. And literally, I'm just going to go on, stamp the rest, finish off the gold, and then you'll see it with its handles, and then it just needs sealed. So in here I've got the original coral colour that I mixed up, and I want to put a little bit of Pallet Knife sort of distress. There's an awful lot of orange going on down the bottom, but not so much up the top. So I'm just going to touch up some of the parts up here just to kind of bring this orange in. Just to make it balance. I think something like maybe, I want quite a bit. So let's see. Yeah, I think that's probably enough on there. And just a hint of it at this side here, maybe on, just there. Bit on this front part. Just to kind of balance out the bottom and the top. So that's all I'm doing here, and I still have a little bit more gold that I need to do up here as well. So I'm just going to touch up around some of the edges up here with a little bit of gold, just so that everything carries on, you know, like we've been, you know, kind of like methodical in where we've put all our paint. Now, the last thing I have to do to complete the piece before I seal it, because I won't seal it on camera, I'm just going to be sealing it with wax, just plain wax, clear wax. I'm not putting, I don't think I'm putting dark wax on, but if I am, I'll do a video on it. So all I'm going to do lastly is just in these panels here, which have ended up looking quite gold and quite green, and I'm just going to kind of do just a little bit of texture, just a little bit, just kind of maybe into the edge, and the same on the other side. And I'll get Matt in to kind of pan back and show you how it looks. Move these out of the way, show some of the stamping maybe. This is my box to stand on. So I'm going to wax it, but this huge piece of furniture is now finished. And what we did was we put a dry brush in, we coated it first in Antibes Green by Annie Sloan. That was our base coat. Then what we did was we put Provence and Napoleonic blue as a wash over the top of these. We applied our inlay just by adding a mix of the two. We stamped it with the sunflower stamp, which I then painted coral, and then I stamped it with blue ink. I've added gold. I've added some of the red coral for texture. I've added 2 different types of handles just to give it that extra quirk. I've wet distressed areas back, and now I'm going to seal it with some wax. So we finished our piece, it's all done, it's all completed. We painted it, we washed it with colour, we applied the IOD indigo florals, and we used the IOD sunflower stamp and painted it in as a big gerbera daisy. We changed the hardware, it's all been waxed. Inside's been waxed with Big Mama's butter to restore the wood, and she's finished. So I've been Lel from Made by Marley, and if you've enjoyed this tutorial on how to make over a huge piece of furniture, then please consider subscribing, press the bell so you're notified when we release any new videos. And if there's something particular that you want to do and you don't know how, or you're looking for a technique, just leave a message and I'll see what I can do in my next video. Thank you.